This is Jeff from Dexter's Radio Hour, and this week my special guest is jazz drummer, professional jazz drummer, and editor of Chicago Jazz Magazine, Mike Jeffers. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thanks for having me on the show, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, I initially interviewed you, must have been about 15 years ago when you were still working, doing sets at Kiava in Des Plaines, which has since been closed. But that was a lot of fun, so I figured we'd give it a try with video this time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Oh, man, I remember Kiava. Boy, that was, it was like 5 minutes from my house. I remember that because he was just starting to build that out. And I walked in there and somehow I got roped into not only playing there, but helping him book the place for like 6-8 months. Of course, it didn't pay any extra, so I don't know what I'm thinking about. But yeah, it was a cool little spot right in downtown. I remember meeting you there.
And Dan Ferris was the vocalist, the Mike Jeffers trio with Dan Ferris.
That's right. Yeah, every Wednesday, man. What do we call it? Was it like Martini? Well, it was Martinis and Sinatra was the group. I think I know I always had the Martini name in that whole thing.
Yeah, it was advertised as Martini Wednesdays, so people would get the right impression. They weren't going to see any avant-garde jazz.
Well, and that's the thing. And I remember when we talked about this, but I've talked about this a lot with people, is that, people have this, oh, I hate jazz, I hate jazz, I hate jazz, and then all you have to do is ask, well, do you like Frank Sinatra?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, even do you like Michael Bublé, right? Let's bring it to the present. You like
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love Michael Bublé. Well, I hate to tell you, you actually like jazz. And they're stunned, but jazz is so many different genres built into it that, but when you kick around, like Frank Sinatra,
Mel
Torme, Dean Martin, Tony Bennett, Michael Bublé, Diana Krall, that's jazz. That's what jazz is. So every time I do stuff, and I haven't booked a lot of stuff in clubs recently just because of my schedule, but when I would do that, that's why we called that group Martinis and Sinatra, because it was like, there's nobody's going to say, well, what kind of music do they play? Well, Sinatra, obviously. Oh, Frank's there? Well, yeah, because Martinis.
I never thought of that. My wife loves Michael Bublé, and I hear him, and I'm like, he sounds just like Frank Sinatra. So
that's it, man. And when you listen to Michael Bublé, and I like Michael Bublé a lot. Some guys don't like him, the pure guys or whatever. I really dig him. He's mixing pop, and he's mixing jazz, and I kind of think that's what kind of music I love. I grew up, I was listening to heavy metal, I was doing all that stuff. I got into jazz, I was listening to Led Zeppelin, I'm listening to Count Basie, I didn't really worry about it, so and he's right around in my generation, so it makes sense. That's what he was growing up on, all different genres mixed together, and he puts that into his music, so it's kind of cool.
And some other things that you've been involved with in addition to ChicagoJazz.com, and you're publishing the Chicago Blues program now, I understand.
Yeah, so I'll go down I got a whole list. Everybody's always like, man, how do you even have time to do anything? But really, it all kind of encompasses under jazz and blues. So, we started ChicagoJazz.com. I started ChicagoJazz.com in 2000. Chicago Jazz Magazine, which was a print magazine, in 2002. So I had ChicagoJazz.com and Chicago Jazz Magazine, the print magazine. Came out every 2 months at that point. I still remember driving around to 300 locations every time it came out and delivered it myself.
Wow.
Because that's what would have to happen. You're kind of
publisher / paperboy.
That was it, man. Back then I knew all the Borders, all the Barnes and Noble. That's because that's where I put them. All the Starbucks. Well, Starbucks wasn't around. All the coffee houses and things like that. But then in 2003, I got the city contract to do the Chicago Jazz Festival program book, the official program book, and then 2004 I started doing the Chicago Blues Festival program book. So now I do all of that stuff, every year since. So it's a great partnership with the city. The cities work with the Department of Cultural Affairs, special events, great people there. But I've got my hands in everything.
Could you tip your head down just for a second? The White Sox, huh? Cubs fans aren't going to like that.
I got a story about that, but since this isn't about baseball, but I was a Cub fan. I grew up as a Cub fan. I just couldn't take it after 2003. Couldn't take it anymore. I literally I cried in 1984 or 89, and then 2003. I remember they lose. I'm in Park Ridge. I have like a whole party going on, and they lose. And then we bought a place in Bridgeport in 2004 in the fall, and they won the World in 2005. I'm like, what am I doing with this Cubs, man?
It's a sign. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I'm not a hater, though. I'm not a hater.
So you kind of rode the wave of the internet to, launch your publishing career, media career. That was good timing, it seems like.
Well, it would have been even better timing if I didn't do it in the jazz genre, because obviously the smallest market I could find for
yeah.
But, what am I going to do? But, finding that niche, but really it just kind of worked out because, I went to school. I went to Oakton Community College and started playing drums, but I was actually in high school. I was taking drum lessons at Oakton Community College.
We have to mention Maine West. That's where my kids.
That's right.
That's where my kids went to high school. So you started out at Maine West, and when it moved up to Oakton.
Started off at Maine West, but I started taking lessons junior to senior year at Oakton Community College, and then I was in the marching band at Maine West because somebody said to me, well, if you think you're going to major in music, you probably should take marching band in high school or something, right? I'm like, yeah. But I was lucky enough because I was at Oakton during that whole time, senior year, taking lessons, and I was practicing like 4 or 5 hours a day sometimes, and weekends for sure, and then at least 2 or 3 hours a day at home, because the drum instructor I was taking lessons with, Jake Jurger, scared the hell out of me. I didn't want to not practice, which was a great thing, actually. What was great, actually, it's funny because 3 years ago they gave me the Fine Arts Alumni of the Year award. So I actually have a plaque up on the wall at Maine West. I don't know.
Nice. I'll have to look for that. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's great because all my friends that went to Maine West that were all in the AP courses, they don't have a plaque on the wall. So I always remind them.
You get your revenge, yeah?
That's right. But no, I was at Oakton, and after high school, I ended up going to Oakton, and I was lucky enough. I was in the advanced percussion ensemble, the top jazz band there. We ended up playing in Carnegie Hall. I was 19. I played in Carnegie Hall. I did a concert with Louis Bellson when I was there, which was unbelievable. And then I went to summer jazz camp, which was at Elmhurst College, but it was a Jamie Aebersold jazz camp. And at that jazz camp is where I met Ed Self, Dan Hurley, the two guys that taught at the University of North Texas, which is just like one of the number one schools. At that point, it was like that, Berkeley and Miami and Indiana, top jazz schools in the world, and changed my entire direction of what was going on just that week, because they basically told me I needed to get my act together. I wasn't playing the way modern people played because the guy I was studying with was, out of the 50s. So, I had reading chops and stuff, but I wasn't up to speed drum set wise. So I quit taking lessons with Jake and started practicing. Like I was practicing like 10 hours a day, and urine Des Plaines. Yeah. I used to practice at St. Mary's Church in downtown Des Plaines, down in the basement, because my mom was the choir director, and the priest didn't care as long as I didn't bother him. He was in the
not keeping anybody awake. Huh?
No, exactly. So I would practice in the basement. Literally, I would work during the day, like 4 or 5 hours at a wood refinishing shop my buddy owned, and then I would practice from 4 or 5 o'clock at night until like 4 in the morning, and then I'd get up in the morning and do the same thing over and over, because I was trying to catch up on marimba, trying to catch up on drum set, trying to catch up on vibes, tip, all that stuff. And within 9 months, I did all of that. I went down to North Texas, auditioned, and I got a full ride. And I make it simple, but it really was not simple.
Life-changing experience, huh?
Yeah, completely. And, and bring it back to full circle, right? If we jump full circle, I came back from North Texas. I was playing 7 nights a week, teaching private lessons, doing all that stuff. And a buddy of mine bought the name ChicagoJazz.com when he bought MichaelJeffers.com for me. He was doing web stuff in 1999. And I got the name ChicagoJazz.com, and that's when I got into business, because I'm like, how do I drive traffic to this website? I need to learn business, and that's really what sparked my interest on that whole level too.
That was a very fortunate. I know a lot of people invest money in just buying domain names, and so you're Lucky you got ChicagoJazz.com, especially at that time.
I'll tell you, man, I've been offered not insane amounts of money because I know somebody. I actually know somebody that owns Chicago.com, and he's been offered insane amounts of money for Chicago.com. But he actually built a whole business out around it. He sold the whole business to somebody rather than just
just the domain.
Yeah, but yeah, that was the time, man. If I had a little more foresight, I would have bought ChicagoWhiteSox.com or something. Beat them.
Yeah. Just to give equal time, I took tenor saxophone lessons at Oakton and at Harper, just because I love the sound of a saxophone. I didn't expect to be a professional musician, but I don't feel quite so bad now that I suck at the saxophone after hearing how many hours you put in playing the drums. It's like, well, no wonder I don't sound that good.
Well, it's one of those things too that I think a lot of younger musicians. I mean, I taught a lot of younger musicians for a long time. I taught for 10 years or something, private lessons. And there were those certain guys that just got that interest, and that's what it takes. It takes like just cranking. I mean, if you're into it and you want to play, there's like no day off. There's no like, oh, it's Saturday, it's Sunday, I'll catch up on my. No, I mean, you could do that if you don't want to do it professionally. But if you want to do it professionally, it's every day as much as possible. Very strict though. You got to do it like a very guided thing. Like I always had an outline, exactly what I was doing every single day, and then the next day it was an outline of exactly what I was doing. And it was interesting because I know that before we came on, we were talking a little bit about how maybe some younger students might watch this, or some music students at Harper. And the one thing I'll say is a couple of things is every day, this is the thing that I learned at North Texas, and I completely believe it. Every day you don't practice, you go back 2 days. So that's how I always have thought. And I think about that like with everything, like with working out, with business, with everything. Every day you don't do something, you go back 2 days. So like if it's Saturday, you don't feel like practicing. Well, now you're back on Thursday. And when you start thinking of it like that, even if you pick up your sticks or pick up your mouthpiece or play trumpet or something, 10 minutes, you did something that day. It doesn't
progressing instead of sliding back.
Exactly. It's not like you got to do 15 hours like of insane stuff like I used to every single day. And that's something. And the other thing that I would say, like for younger students or college kid students, I should say, I know watching YouTube videos and checking things out and all that, but going out and seeing live performance is the key, because you can watch YouTube videos which are killer. Practice a lot of stuff. You can learn a lot of stuff, play along with stuff, all that. I do the same thing. But when you go out and you experience it live, it's just different. And you get to hang with the musicians, but it's different because it's a different timbre. You hear it differently in the club, different feel, different atmosphere, the whole 9 yards. It's so important to get that ingrained in your system, because if you get that,
get the drive
stuff. Yeah. Well, and you have a frame of reference. Plus, it's amazing. These musicians will talk to you too. You can get a lot out of it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I have to mention Ken Spur at Harper College. I don't know if he's in charge of the jazz program, but he's part of the jazz program there. I understand you know Ken, right?
Yeah, Ken gave me one. He's a great player, great piano player, super cool dude. I love Ken. But he actually, back in the 90s, he had a steady Saturday night gig up at the Plaza Club, which is on top of the Prudential building. And
nice.
Grand piano, upright bass, and a very small drum set. So I got really brushes up there. But he would hire me probably times a month. It was dynamite. And he would play with Nick Tuntis, the bass player, and Nick played with Judy Roberts forever. They were the house trio and all that stuff. So Nick was there with Ken, and we would play tunes, man. And then we would go to his house sometimes and rehearse and get other tunes together. And it was great. But yeah, Ken's a great player. And that's right. I forgot he's at Harper.
Yeah. I think everybody at Harper's on summer vacation, because I didn't get a response to not just Ken, but a couple of other emails I sent out to put feelers out. So we'll let him off the hook this time, but I'll let him know that he said hi.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the how you produce your videos, because I'm kind of a techno geek, and I had some experience with the radio show and so forth. But your videos on ChicagoJazz.com look really professional. So what kind of support do you have for producing those videos?
I started off because I wanted to get content about 3 years ago. So I actually literally, if you look at the earlier ones, like I think it's like episode 30, 138 now, or 139 is where I'm at right now.
Mhm.
But if you look at like episode 1, 2, 5, 6, all the way up until episode 80, I think it was 80 or 85. I shot that with an iPhone 6s and and
Wow.
and a kind of a small boom mic coming right off of that, just pointed directly at us. And that's how I was shooting those. And then I got a light kit and I got a Canon, and there's a boom shotgun mic on top of the Canon
Right.
that I'm using. And with two lights and a shotgun mic right on us, I mean, that's really all I'm doing. I'm lighting it up. I shoot everything myself because
Hmm.
my assistant, she's busy or whatever, and it's just I've got enough problems trying to coordinate an interview with somebody, let alone trying to coordinate having my assistant. You know, so I shoot all of that stuff like that, and it's just straight on. It's actually at Johnny O's right here in Bridgeport, which is kind of like a fun fact. But Johnny O's is a grocery store, liquor store right on the corner of 35th and Morgan, and right next to it, there's like a hidden dining room, which used to be open. It was a bar restaurant. And
Oh,
when the Spiegel company closed, they closed the bar restaurant because there was 12,000 people working on the corner of 35th and Morgan. And when they closed that. So I live like 500 feet away from there. So I just walk right over there and do the interviews. It works out great. It's a funky spot. All the musicians dig it, but it also, surprisingly, I've got it dialed in where the audio's dialed in, the lighting's dialed in. I can just, boom, I can set it up in 5 minutes and be running and gunning and ready to roll.
so that's like a spare room. I wondered how you timed it so there were never any other customers in there. Like, did
Well,
they put up a barrier rope or something?
he's reopening it, so he has events in there. But I have carte blanche, so I just call him up and say, Pete, I'm doing you at this time and this time. He's like, okay, fine, no problem. But actually, there's actually I'm in the process of setting some things up where we're going to start doing live audience stuff over there. So I'm
Oh,
going to have interviews with people and start having audience people come in, because I do get requests from a lot of people that watch the show. Oh man, can I just come and I'll just sit? I'll just watch. This is so cool, And
yeah.
it's not quite set up that way yet. So let us get to it. But
Get some folding chairs or something for that
well,
temporarily.
he's got booths. Those booths we sit in, he's got all along the wall and stuff.
That's
But
awesome.
it's like he's in the process of opening that back up. So once that happens, then it's going to be like the perfect spot. It'll be like, I'll be doing my show there. You can come down, have a hot dog, have a beer, watch the show.
That's cool. I like that. And
Yeah.
now you're also doing some actual studio for your features.
Yeah. So, I printed Chicago Jazz Magazine, print copy, 15,000 circulation, 300 locations every 2 months. From 2002 up until last March was the last time. So 2018,
Oh,
March of 2018, I stopped printing it because the price of the printing bill was insane. I was losing money every issue for like 2 years. More people wanted digital advertising, social media advertising and stuff like that. Plus the video stuff. People want to get involved with the videos and stuff like that. So I ended up backing that off. And my thought process is like, in this day and age, nobody wants to read a 5,000 word interview on their phone, or they're
yeah.
going to sit in front of a laptop either. So my thing is like, I've been doing these videos for like 2 years at that point. I'm like, why don't I do the feature interviews as a video and a podcast? So I did a couple of them at Johnny O's just to kickstart the thing, because I'm a big believer in, like, if you say you're going to do something, just do it. Don't
Right.
like think about it. Don't, just do it.
Don't think of excuses why you can't do it.
Exactly.
Just do it.
There's a ton of excuses why I shouldn't have been interviewing, a Maurice Brown from the Tedeschi Trucks Band at Johnny O's for the feature interview, right? I mean, there's a lot of excuses. I shouldn't be doing that, but I didn't care. I was like, whatever. He's like, well, where is this place? I'm like, just come over to Johnny O's. We'll have a beer. We'll hang out. You have a hot dog. You'll be on the cover of the magazine. He's like, okay, that sounds good to me. So I started it that way, but I wanted to up the production value. So I actually got a partnership. So if you look at Chicago Jazz Magazine, you look at the feature interviews starting with Patricia Barber, which was last November. Now I'm a monthly digital magazine. I worked out a partnership with Flashpoint Academy, which is a school. It's a film and audio school in downtown Chicago on Clark and Washington. They got a 4-year film school, two-year art school. the facility's insane. They have 2 full recording studios with a baby grand piano, live rooms, isolation booths, all that. And then they have all of these production suites and everything else. So I partnered with them because they were looking for somebody like me that did a monthly thing where they could have students have hands-on opportunity to do and work with professionals, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they're on deadline because it's like this baby's got to come out June 1st. So we're on deadline here. Let's go. We just shot the thing. You got 2 weeks to turn it around, get me all the graphics, dial it in, go back and forth with me, and get it done.
And so whatever you do is going to be seen by thousands of people. So, it's kind of motivating.
Exactly. And it's worked out good because I started a digital marketing company out of all the stuff that I'm doing with Chicago Jazz Magazine. So I'm working with different businesses and we're shooting different video. And so I'm able to hire some of those kids that are running the cameras or cutting production stuff for me to actually work on corporate videos with me, almost like a paid internship kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a great partnership that I have set up with them. And of course, then they're, logos on everything and they're able to be seen by a lot of people. So if there's a lot of students and things that are watching this stuff, then they have an idea of what kind of work's going on.
It's a lot to do with networking. I think you found that out yourself, I guess. I did a show a few weeks ago that I called Application, where the theme was, if you want to be successful, apply what you know to an area that has a need. And you're kind of a perfect example of that because you had the talent and the experience with the jazz drumming and you applied it to multimedia. So here you are.
Well, it's interesting because I'm really trying to, and like I said, I went to North Texas on a full music scholarship. So I didn't graduate. I left there early because I could play. So I came back to Chicago, just started playing 6 nights, 7 nights a week and sitting in constantly and blah, blah, blah. But when I got ChicagoJazz.com, that's when I really wanted to learn business. And I have always wanted to do the digital stuff. When I started it in 2000, it just the time wasn't right, especially in the jazz world, because you were
ahead of the curve.
Yeah, there wasn't anybody understanding what was going on, and I didn't know all of the ins and outs of how to do things on my own, right? And they certainly didn't have these platforms. It was a lot of coding at that point and all that. I had to hire somebody to do coding and build the first ChicagoJazz.com and everything else. But now I just feel like now's the time is right, and in the jazz world, there's a lot of people still working about 10, 15 years behind the times because that's just where everything has been. But if you look at the artists that are coming out, Micaiah McCraven being one of them, and even Marquise Hill and some of these younger guys, these guys are constantly online, constantly on SoundCloud, they're on Spotify, they're pushing out new music, constantly shooting videos, bending genres, and they're pushing the envelope just because that's where the audience is.
Yeah.
It's really,
and you can reach a lot more people with, I wouldn't say less effort, but more quickly, I guess, than you could with touring the United States or Europe or something.
Yeah, well, and the thing with me with the magazine is I watched and dropping off that magazine in different places for all those years. And then I finally had enough money I could hire somebody to do it, but it was still expensive. But, in the past 2 years, man, I'm looking at my numbers and I'm like, everything online is blowing up because I made a concerted effort to start really dropping consistent videos and stuff. But my numbers are going up and I'm like, well, this is for the audiences. I don't even pick up papers anymore. I'm like, why am I printing a paper? This is crazy. So I'm a big believer in finding where the audience is and going where the audience is. And the audience just happens to be right now on social media and, on websites and stuff, and obviously on streaming services and all of that good stuff. So that's where I'm focused right now.
Speaking of younger jazz musicians, I loved your interview with Roy McGrath. My wife is Puerto Rican, so that kind of caught my attention. I love tenor saxophone. So, but I like your interviewing style because it seems like you have enough background to connect with people. So everything's not scripted. You don't just sit there and read a bunch of questions. You actually have a conversation with people and they respond to that. They really open up.
Yeah, no, the thing with Roy, which was great, is that that's how I do all this stuff. Like in 2010 is the first time I got a radio show. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing a print magazine. I was dropping things online. So I always kept the online thing going, but I knew I really liked being on the radio because I had done some Rick Cogan things, and I was on with Nick DiGilio and stuff on WGN. I'm like, man, that's kind of fun. I wonder what a talk show for jazz would be like, because it seems to me as a musician, we hang out, we have great conversations, and we're not talking about the nitty gritty chord changes when we're sitting at a bar. We're talking about stuff, you know.
And so nobody has a tape recorder there, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately.
Well,
you probably don't want to hear some of the things you say in a bar.
But, you know, and that's always been kind of the way I wanted to do stuff. And I think I'm naturally curious too, you know. I mean, that's probably why I started a magazine and started a Q&A, you know, interview thing. So when I sit down, and that's how I started the first show in 2010, when I was on for 2 hours every night at 9:50 a.m. We'd have a live band and all that stuff. And I'd interview 3 different groups or individuals or club owners, whoever would come to the station downtown. And then that ended, and I started doing the same thing up at Katarina's, which is used to be up on Irving Park Road. And same kind of deal, you know, the band would play and stuff, but I was interviewing people and trying to get stories out of them and find out what was happening and learn about stuff. So I just took that same thing. I'm like, you know, I like doing that. There's an audience. People really dig it. And that's what we're going to do. But I got to make it simple, because I'm going to do it on my own on this one. I've got the platforms and everything, and that's kind of what I utilize. But from an interview standpoint, I like to read stuff, just their bio, get an idea of where things are, understand what we're talking about, you know, if we're going to plug something up front or whatever we do, and then go in. But, you know, inevitably when you're talking to somebody that's interesting, and, you know, 99% of the people that are, you know, you talk to in some way are interesting, and it's an interesting conversation. And if you're curious about stuff, I just let the conversation go. So really, I make very minimal notes. Just, you know, here's the website, here's the gig that they're doing, or here's what they have coming up. Because when I start asking questions about, now you grew up in Puerto Rico, right? It just opens the door, because now we start going down the wormhole. And, you know, it's amazing. Like, I mean, if you watched Roy's interview, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, he came out of Puerto Rico, I mean, who would be playing, Roy's playing jazz coming out of Puerto Rico? You wouldn't think that, but it's him, you know. So it's like that with a lot of those interviews. But Roy's one of those specific dudes. And I should mention, too, because I looked on his website, and, of course, he's got 0 gigs listed, because that's, you know, that's what musicians do. They don't put any of their gigs up online because, hey, people might show up, right? What a concept. I always give people crap about that. But Roy's playing at 90 Mile Cafe, I believe is the name of it, right in the Lincolnwood Mall. Every Tuesday it's a Latin jazz jam session.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right off of Thule in McCormick.
Yeah, it's pretty close to me. I'll have to check that out. Yeah,
and he's there with a full band. I mean, it's killing. So, I mean, yeah, super nice guy. Great dude, killer player.
Yeah. Let's, to bring it back to the Blues Festival, you interviewed Guy King not too long ago, and he's going to be playing June 7th, 2:45, according to my notes, Friday, June 7th. I'm going to be out of town on vacation, unfortunately, at the Crossroads stage. Is that the main stage?
It's actually, they've got 6 stages set up at the Blues Fest. So the Crossroads stage is a stage that's closer to Monroe. And the main stage is the Prickster Pavilion. So that's the main stage. But the Crossroads stage, I mean, that's a happening stage. I'm going to be actually emceeing the front porch stage, which is on Randolph in Michigan, essentially. So I'm going to be there from like 11 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock every day up on stage. And do some interviews in between for Southwest Airlines in between the sets. But Guy King, you know, he's a good friend. I've had him on the show a couple times. I mean, we've talked for years. He's a killing player, and he's one of those guys that can cross over. He plays jazz, he plays blues, he can play rock and everything else. Sings incredibly, and he's teaming up with Chris Kane, who's like a legendary blues guitar player. So the powers that be at the city wanted to kind of put some special show together, since Guy was on the gig on the fest last year. They wanted to kind of do something different, and they thought the 2 styles would really mesh well. So when I had Guy on and we were talking about it, they're playing there, and then they're also doing Buddy Guys that night. So it's going to be like a double dip for Guy King, you know. So yeah, he's definitely, if you're coming to the Blues Fest, he's definitely somebody to check out.
And just to give people a taste of the kind of things you talk about on your show, I heard that he recently went from Fender to Gibson for his guitar.
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't even bring it up, but that just goes to show you, right? When you're starting to go down the wormhole and you're asking questions, I think we were talking about something as far as tone or something, and he switched over and he's part of it, as they say, part of the Gibson family now, and which makes sense to me because it's a warmer sounding guitar. He can play the hollow body and he can play blues and jazz and all that stuff without even worrying about it. It's just, I think that
Sorry, I thought I turned this off.
No, you're fine. I think that sound mixes perfectly with what Guy plays and his voice and all that stuff. So yeah, he switched to Gibson, which is pretty hip. I mean, that's a heavy duty guitar manufacturer, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know that much about guitars, but I was surprised to hear he's playing a Fender as a jazz guitarist. So Gibson kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So let me think if there's anything we need to do to wrap it up here. You're probably about as tired as I am. I put in an 8-hour day and came home and took care of the dogs, and now I'm trying to do an interview.
Let me plug the stage that I'm doing. So I'll plug that stage real fast. So I'm going to be on the front porch stage. I'm emceeing it. I'm going to have a different interview. So I'm going to actually have Erwin Helfer is going to be up there. I'm going to interview him on the stage in front of everyone. So if you come down to see somebody play, hang out. I'm doing 10-minute interviews in between 4 of the sets in the afternoon. Erwin is an 85-year-old boogie woogie blues piano player who also plays jazz. Super nice guy. But when you delve into his background, he hung around with everybody, and like Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters,
wow,
when Helfer played. Oh yeah, Muddy. Oh yeah, man. I mean, like he grew up with those guys. So
legendary.
Oh man, we're gonna have an interesting conversation. I'm sure Catherine Davis, the great blues and jazz singer, is gonna stop by as well. We're gonna have Toronzo Cannon. It looks like so. That's gonna be a cool little thing. But the Blues Fest goes all weekend, and there's 6 stages. So if you can make it there, that's dynamite. And then of course Chicago Jazz Magazine and all that stuff, we're coming out every month with that. And then to tie it all together, the Chicago Jazz Fest happens Labor Day weekend. They're extending that this year, August 23rd to September 1st. 4 nights at Millennium Park, and I'm doing the program book for that. I'm going to be doing interviews down there and everything else. So there's going to lots of stuff happening this summer for Chicago Jazz Magazine.
Last time I was at the Blues Fest, it was still in Grant Park, and we took the L down, had a cooler full of beverages, and we played Frisbee. Is it still the same kind of vibe, or is it more crammed together now?
Well, it's crammed together. Yeah, it's crammed together. I mean, the Great Lawn is there at the Prickster Pavilion, but, the Grant Park is when I first started doing it. Mm-hmm. And that space that they had in Grant Park was just it was perfect. I mean, it could accommodate everybody. This space is much tighter, obviously, but they had to do it for security reasons and everything else. Mm-hmm. It was very cost prohibitive being Grant Park the way they were, but yeah,
that's kind of what I was curious about, because you probably don't want to bring a 24-pack of Budweiser in your cooler and then have to leave it outside the gate at the venue, right?
Oh, they check everything. There's no outside alcohol allowed into the fest or any of that stuff. So yeah, beware. But they have ample, big shocker, right? They have ample ability for purchase it on site once inside the Blues Fest. So there you go.
All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to let you go, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I'll edit this thing together. I'm going to do the audio portion Friday from 6 to 7, and I'll post the Skype interview on the Harper website as soon as I can figure out whose approval I need.
Okay. Can you send me links so that I can post that up and share it out and do all that good stuff out on Chicago Jazz Magazine too?
Will do.
Awesome. All right, Jeff. Hey. Hopefully this one worked.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.